Welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, July 2nd. Looking at significant wave heights for the South Pacific Ocean, we see a somewhat more active pattern. Specifically, low pressure in the southeastern Pacific has generated 26, almost 28-foot seas, and that is supposed to build while moving out of the California swell window, but targeting Chile. Also remnants of a previous gale with 26-foot seas also pushing at Chile, and cutoff lows south of Tahiti generating also 26-foot plus seas aimed reasonably well at those islands. So there is something to look forward to. As usual, we'll start this week's tour taking a look at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales, and when they do form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, that is a dip in the jet stream, specifically the southern branch of the jet, pushing to the north. Here's the southern branch, running down around 65 south, and sure enough, there's a well-formed trough. See it? Pushing to the north, well to the north. Actually, one trough there, second trough there, a double dip trough with 130 knot winds pushing up into it. That'll help support formation of low pressure in the upper atmosphere. That would be a clockwise circulation in the southern hemisphere, also down at the surface. And that helps generate winds, and winds, of course, generate seas. Seas, when they radiate away from the fetch area, produce swell. Swell makes surf when it hits your beach. So, one trough there, potential to form or support low pressure development. Another trough there that is already, and look at it, I think that's being fed by, what's that, 160 knot winds, also supporting gale development. And then there was the cutoff lows somewhere in this area that we were looking at. But notice, typically, when you have low pressure between two jet stream flows, but not directly fed by either one of them, tends to not be too strong or too powerful. But nonetheless, apparently there's something going on there. Anyway, let's put this into motion. We see the trough here. So the first trough off Chile gets cut off there, dies by Monday. The trough further south also kind of withers. Oh, had a bad frame there. Anyway, and then, but still notice we have a general rising flow here in the jet stream, pushing off to the northeast. And we continue here. No good real troughs indicated. I mean, you really want to see a more pronounced push to the north and stronger winds, at least 120 knots. But still, we see the jet lifting to the northeast, and that's good. That's better than nothing. We'll take it. And that continues into Thursday. There's another little patch of winds, but still notice it's kind of more just a zonal flow. That is the northern jet running flat west-east on about the 30 south latitude line. Southern branch down around 65. That doesn't mean you can't get low pressure development. It just, odds aren't good for it developing. Then we'll just roll this out where we are. 180 hours. There we go. Close enough. We had some another bad frame in the model there. Anyway, so most of the energy activity looks like it's set up to be in the immediate next day or two. Let's go take a look down at the surface. Here we go. Surface level pressure, surface level winds. East of New Zealand, high pressure, 1028 millibars. Cutoff low. Here, we'll sort of try to pull that away there. You can see 40 knot winds right there. Pushing Tahiti's where 149 west and about 18 south, so right there. So yes, fetch aimed reasonably well at Tahiti. They certainly will get some swell. Even Hawaii might get some swell from that. We got to go check out, of course, the wave models. And then, of course, our bigger, broader system here in the southeast Pacific, tiny little area of 55 knot winds. Just sort of roll this out, see what it does. Continues into this evening, 50 knot winds. And continues, then lifts northeast. Another fetch developing behind that too. But notice this fetch area is not huge. You really want a broader fetch. Now here's another system, and notice by Tuesday it kind of dissipates. Winds here pushing to the south. There was a lot of expectation around energy pushing into southern Chile. But now that the system is actually developing, it does not look nearly as impressive as it did even 24 hours ago, much less 48 or 72 hours ago. Anyway, next system, small area, 50 knot winds. This is in the California swell window too. Well, you know, with fetch from this direction, relative to Southern California, once you get to about 117 west, that's when everything shuts down. But still, so we see fetch there. And then we'll just roll this out. We see continued fetch even into Wednesday. There we go. Another tiny area, 45 knot winds. But that, you know, they all kind of blow up and then fade just as quick. Friday still, yet another fetch, 120 west in the swell window for California. So what this suggests is a pattern of continued very south angle swell, probably targeting Southern California, not so much Northern California, and really focused more on, let's say, Central America down into Peru and Chile. Anyway, we still have more activity beyond that. Here's a little system forecast almost a week out, southeast of New Zealand, but again, very small. And again, another one here in the southeast Pacific. It just goes on, which is kind of good. Wish the systems were bigger, more like this system here, forecast south as Tasmania a week out. We'll see if that really happens. Models are not believable that far in advance. So here we go now, significant wave heights for the South Pacific Ocean. Let's see the effect of those winds on the ocean surface. And I'm not going to actually move the mouse over because then the controls will be exposed. But the system south of Tahiti, 29-foot seas, aimed reasonably well at Tahiti. Swell should result. Very close, what is that, about 1,200 nautical miles away. So though the system isn't very large, it's very close. Little swell decay, more energy for there. Anyway, Southeast Pacific, what do we have here? 27, almost 28-foot seas, and then remnants of this other system off Chile with the same 26-foot seas. Well, now watch this. Broad area of 20, 22, 24, let's say 26-foot seas, and just a little tiny core of 30-foot seas. And there we go. What's that? 36-foot seas, but again, over a very small area. For large swell, you want a broader fetch. This is good for southern Chile. Nothing epic, but certainly good for some swell pushing. And notice, watch this. It lifts to the northeast, targeting Chile. Now, California swell window cuts off right here for Southern California. Still, some energy will probably seep into Southern California from this. Then, here's this pattern. Next system right behind it, 36-foot seas over a very small area, but in the Southern California swell window. So something could result from that. But again, targeting Peru and Chile, you can just eyeball it and see it. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. And then another system behind that, 29-foot seas, almost 30-foot seas right here, 40-knot winds. So yet more swell, and that moves out of the California swell window. Another one, and we're into Friday, just tiny, tiny little fetch, but then it blows up quickly, 39-foot seas supposedly, right barely in the California swell window. And again, it peaks right there, what is that, 42-foot seas, and so you can look at right here that we pick out the highest seas anywhere on the chart and map the actual significant wave height size and the winds there, 56-knot winds. It tells you where exactly. Okay, anyway, and moving on. So it just looks like this continued string of small, very like 180-degree angled swell for Southern California, but the focus again, Peru, Chile. Anyway, roll this out. And here we go again, another tiny little one, 120, but here's more going on over here. This is kind of what we're interested in more, but it's still developing. And again, so you get the general idea. Consistent, small, background southern hemi swell, and larger at times, mainly for Southern California, certainly larger for Peru and Chile. The Southwest Pacific, if this does something, it'll be amazing. But right now, all the activity, again, it follows the jet stream. We saw the jet, right? Running right around along 65 south, and then steadily lifting north in this region. That's where all the storm development is. So you can look, you don't have to know anything else. If you look at a jet stream chart, you can at least get a general idea of where the potential for storms and therefore swell activity will be. So that's all for the future. But is there any swell actually in the water pushing towards Hawaii or California right now? So we'll go back a week. Last Sunday, here's the area, 30-foot seas, but notice it's all pushing towards Antarctica. No good there. This little system here off of Chile has made swell. That swell is actually hitting Southern California right now from a very, like a 155-degree angle. So yes, it's possible to get swell this far away, but it has to be, it can't be traveling this way. It has to be at least going north or almost northwest. And here, maybe we can pull it up and you can just, there you go. Here's the system. That's probably, I think, as much as we had. It was stationary, but pushing fetch into the Southern California swell window. Anyway, so we roll out, just looking for anything that happened. And there was this system here on Friday. Again, this was the start of the whole storm cycle. We'll go back. It was Thursday night it started developing 27-foot seas. Again, taking that sort of northeast track, obliquely angling energy towards California, up to 29-foot seas, 29-foot seas again on, Friday. This is about the edge of the swell window. And then it lifts to the northeast out of the swell window, targeting Chile mainly, and then here's the system developing for Tahiti. This is as of Saturday, and then you pretty much see where we're at today. So, one small swell pushing north from a very south angle in the water right now, probably going to arrive California next weekend, late next weekend kind of thing, Sunday, Monday sort of thing, a week out, nothing huge, but some swell. And then, looking at the charts, we see a whole stack of energy behind that. And then there's always the wind swell question, relative to Hawaii and California. Right now, small gradient. Actually, this gradient was much stronger off of Cape Mendocino on Saturday, 25-plus knot winds. It has died. If you look at the buoys in Central California, you can see that there was swell this morning. It's dropped to almost half its size because the fetch has died. And because it's so nearby, there's only about a 6 to 10 hour lag, something like that, between the time the fetch dies, the swell travels down and gets into, let's say, San Francisco, Monterey Bay area, maybe a little bit further down into Pismo Beach and Point Conception area. Anyway, tomorrow, here we go, Monday, fetch, high pressure again here. Heat low inland creates a pressure gradient. The isobars tighten up. You get north winds up to 30 knots, and that will again, have the wind swell starting to increase, but also notice right along the coast here, you get the eddy flow, south winds coming up the backside, the lows like right there, and so you get south winds, and at protected spots, that can clean things up a bit. And then also notice trades building relative to Hawaii, 15 knots, maybe some 20-knot gusts, good for wind swell. Actually, let's see when that starts. That starts, on, let's say, Monday. So, wind swell for east-facing shores of the Hawaiian Islands Monday. Then we move into Tuesday. The gradient starts fading relative to California. Trades, again, from this 1032 millibar high north of the islands, continues. And then by the time we get to Wednesday, no wind swell expected along the California coast, and wind swell dies relative to Hawaii for east-facing shores. And then things just get kind of quiet for a little bit till we get into next weekend. Let's say Saturday, the gradient again starts forming. Heat low inland, high pressure off the coast, 20-25 knot north winds. And the problem is you really kind of want more of this fetch north, not right along the coast where you want to surf, so otherwise it just gets really trashed out. Maybe trade starting to build for the Hawaiian Islands. Nothing significant. Mainly looking for California here. Again, the fetch just hugging the coast into next weekend and then dying off. And then if you look real closely, we'll do this. A little bit of tropical activity possible, but we're at 174 hours out. Don't buy any of that, and this doesn't look particularly strong. The GFS is notoriously bad doing tropical systems anyway, so we're not holding our breath on that at all. So, wind swell for the rest of this weekend through the 4th. And then also notice here, trades building a week out relative to Hawaii, so maybe some more east wind swell there. Anyway, so, and then midweek, things go quiet, and then next weekend, things wake up a little bit more wind swell-wise, right as the first southern hemi-pulse starts arriving into California. Not so much for Hawaii, though. All right, let's take a look long-term, see what's going on, specifically with the Madden-Julian Oscillation and the El Nino Southern Oscillation. El Nino, La Nina. Try to get some sort of a bead on what's going to happen this winter. So first off, we'll do our inspection for the MJO, specifically looking at winds. Here's the equator, West Pacific here, there's New Guinea. East Pacific here, Ecuador, will be just off the end of the chart here. Equator right there. Kelvin wave generation area, right here, 170 west, out to about 135 east, 5 degrees north and south of the equator. Looking at winds, east trades in control, actually pretty light here in the Kelvin wave generation area. Looking at anomalies, differences from normal for this time of year, we see you notice here, easterly anomalies off of Ecuador starting to show up. But otherwise, neutral anomalies in the Kelvin wave generation area, maybe weak westerly anomalies. Certainly not a sign of, certainly not the inactive phase of the MJO, maybe a weak active phase trying to get organized, or maybe just dead neutral conditions. A quick look at wind anomalies, Kelvin wave generation area, again, right here, right in this little box right here. You can see Australia there, Philippines there, South America there. So here's our little area we're interested for inspecting the MJO. Neutral as of the 26th of June. We'll just sort of work our way through. You see basically nothing changes. A little bit of westerly anomalies maybe right on the date line, but in all kind of a pretty placid pattern. Neutral is what we call it. Looking at the forecast, so here's the entire planet on one chart. The Kelvin wave generation area, this is about 120 east here. That's the date line right there. So let's just say between just around this area, looking down, the blues are easterly anomalies. We've been in this persistent kind of weak blue pattern, weak easterly anomalies, suggestive of some sort of weak La Nina. And right now, here we are. So this is interesting. The model today says we are in easterly anomalies, but we looked at the chart before. Now it's a 5-day average, 5 days past, so that would have been back in here, and that said easterly anomalies. But when you look at what's going on, this is up at 850 millibars, 4,200 feet, which is normally a pretty good proxy for what's going on down at the surface. But that wind anomaly chart we saw in the previous frame, that was from actual buoys down at the ocean surface. You can't argue with that. So this is overstating the easterly anomaly component. And here's the strongest of it, like right now, is forecasted in the next maybe 2 or 3 days or so. And then things get supposedly pretty neutral, but the model's been saying this and saying it, and somehow these easterly anomalies just continue to hang on. We don't expect that to change, and we think that's maybe some sort of a sign of some weak bias towards La Nina right now. Supposedly La Nina is dead, but we think it's still hanging around in the upper atmosphere and hasn't quite given up the ghost, which would not be surprising. So, trying to get a beat on what's going on with the MJO, looking first at the statistical model. The yellows, this is sunlight reflectivity, outgoing long-wave radiation off the ocean surface. Yellows suggest more sunlight, positive numbers, meaning high pressure, meaning the inactive phase of the MJO. And the blues, like there, less sunlight reflectivity, more clouds, and lower pressure, therefore the active phase of the MJO. This, per the statistical model, says we're going into a dead neutral MJO pattern. That kind of makes sense given everything that we're seeing. The GEFS model, GFS ensemble, says no, the inactive phase of the MJO is supposed to hold. This kind of goes counter to what we're going to see in some other slides. We would call this a minority opinion. Looking at phase diagram charts, assume this circle here is the North Pole, looking down on the North Pole. The active phase of the MJO moves from west to east from the Indian Ocean over the maritime continent, over the date line, through the Pacific, under the U.S., across the Atlantic, on the equator, over top of Africa, and then back to the Indian Ocean. The heavy dot is where the active phase of the MJO is. In the Indian Ocean, if it's in the circle, it's very weak, and it certainly is. This projects the forecast. Per this, the ECMF model, the active phase of the MJO is supposed to remain very weak, but eventually make it to the maritime continent, say Bali area, but not make it into the Pacific. GEFS model, which we called a minority opinion, says no, it's supposed to be in the Indian Ocean, and if anything, retrograde to the west, to the western Indian Ocean, maybe back over Africa. We'll see about that. Upper level model. Okay, so the greens are areas, this is up at jet stream level, favorable for precipitation. And this is it's been showing this very weak pattern. So here's the inactive phase of the MJO, we think, moving into Central America and gone. This model runs about 2 weeks ahead of what actually goes on down the surface. But after that, you see what looks to be an active phase of the MJO, but exceedingly weak, and this is a 40-day run of the model. So, you know, we gripe about the GFS model not being accurate 7 days out, and now we're going to take that to the logical extreme and go out 40 days. But anyway, gives you a guideline, maybe a hint of what's going on. Suggests some sort of a, you know, it's kind of mixed. Greens and yellows, favoring more the active phase of the MJO, and then getting weaker. And out, we're talking now, what is that, August 6th or so? than maybe the inactive phase of the MJO, but basically just a very neutral kind of pattern, MJO not having much influence at all. And then our favorite model, the CFS model, 850 millibar wind anomalies, again up about 40,000 feet, actually has a pretty good handle on things. So here's today's date, Kelvin wave generation area, roughly right in here, and sure enough, here it's showing weak westerly anomalies. The yellows are westerly anomalies, the blues are easterly anomalies. Okay, we'll overlay what's going on, and some very weak, I mean this is incredibly weak active phase of the MJO pattern is developing over the Kelvin wave generation area. I don't think we can get it all in the picture here, but maybe we can show you. Nope, can't show it, but 180, actually maybe we can get it right here. There we go. There's 180. There's 120, Kelvin wave generation area right there. Okay, so we'll roll this back down so you can see what's going on. Okay, so weak active phase of the MJO moving into the Kelvin wave generation area. And you see westerly anomalies forecast to build. Nothing strong, just maybe a little bit broader area than what we have today. And continuing for the foreseeable future, the whole way through July into August. And then supposedly a real active phase of the MJO sets up. A little bit stronger westerly anomalies, and you see even here's an inactive phase of the MJO, and even with that, westerly anomalies continue in the Kelvin wave generation area. But notice there's like a brick wall running right down here. Easterly anomalies off to the east. So basically, from the date line, starting, say, in the next week or so, from the date line westward, westerly anomalies. From the date line eastward, easterly anomalies. You know what? We'll take it. That's better than the easterly anomalies over the Kelvin wave generation area, which is kind of where we've been for months and months, courtesy of La Nina. This, just looking at it like this, suggests that La Nina is losing control of the Kelvin wave generation area. That is better for storm production for the coming winter. All right, low-pass filter. The low-pass filter gives you a sense of what's going on with El Nino, La Nina. The solid contour over the Indian Ocean, this is in passes back April, and the dotted contour here over the Kelvin wave generation area is the classic La Nina kind of sign. Now look at this as we move into, we'll say, early August. Yes, the solid contour continues in the Indian Ocean, meaning still kind of a La Nina pattern, but notice this, come August 15th, what was the core of La Nina here over the Kelvin wave generation area shifts off to the right, and 120 east is right, or 120 west is right there. That's the California coastline, so that sets up right over California. So what that means, theoretically, and this has been shifting further off this way, it's kind of, but not hardly anything in the Kelvin wave generation area, suggesting that if there were a trough this winter, it would be, let's say, over the West Pacific, and then once you hit the date line, you'd start building a ridge, and the ridge would continue over California, and then fall back down into a trough maybe in, the middle of the United States, suggesting probably not a wet winter for California the coming winter. But what it also suggests is if you're going to have storms, they're going to be dateline type storms, West Pacific sort of storms. So not a lot of energy coming into California, but what does come would be long-distance groomed energy, probably high pressure over the Atlantic. So one of these, clean, offshore, classic kind of a La Nina configuration, but with energy coming from a long distance away. Hawaii now would be much closer to the source of the energy, much larger surf, but maybe the chance for it to be a little bit rawer just because it's closer. But, that's a guess. We're 6 months out from that. But again, just trying to read the tea leaves, get a sense for what's coming. So we've moved from the discussion about the MJO now into the ENSO discussion, El Nino, La Nina situation. We already kind of, the cat's kind of already out of the bag based on some of the data we've seen. Let's go see what's going on in the ocean. Okay, subsurface ocean temperatures. West Pacific here, East Pacific here. Depth down to 100 meters. Little X's are sensors on the TAO buoy array that's strung the entire way across the equator from 2 north to 2 south. These are sensors on the anchor lines of those buoys, and that's how you get the ocean temperature profile. All warm water in the west, cooler, or okay, so we'll say 30-degree isotherm right there, 28-degree isotherm, cuts off, holding at 145 west. That's a little bit east of Hawaii, and that's been pretty much rock solid, meaning most of the warm water is balled up over here. 24-degree isotherm. It had pulled away, retracted, started coming up here from relative to Ecuador, but now it's back in. Very shallow pool here, but not horribly bad. You know, certainly no signs of clear La Nina. Anyway, moving down, the anomalies, differences from normal. We see temperatures about as normal as you can get, biased slightly warm, 1 degree warmer than normal, subsurface. No indications of any Kelvin wave. If you really were moving towards some sort of an El Nino configuration, you'd want to see piles of warm water over here so that when the active phase of the MJO moved over to the West Pacific, trades would die, or you'd get westerly anomalies, and the warm water here would then start getting pushed to the east at depth. That would be like a Kelvin wave, and then erupt along the Ecuador coast and start creating warming here. We see none of that. We see no source for warming here, just a sort of generic, homogeneous, normal temperature pattern across the entire Pacific. So clearly, no fuel for El Nino development this winter, and no one expects that there would be. We've had 2 years of a super El Nino. Back was at 2014, 2015. All the warm water that normally builds up here has been expended. That's what El Nino does. And then typically you get La Nina. The opposite sort of goes into effect. Cool water starts developing over here. You don't have Kelvin waves. You have just massive upwelling, stronger than normal trades. Now, the good news is, so far, we have not seen that. Our our La Nina for this winter was very weak, and we're hoping that continues to be the case. Looking at another version of the same chart, basically just modeled a little bit different, takes this temperature data, applies it differently, but basically showing the same thing. Kind of a, you know, neutral to, what is this, 1 degree anomalies. Most of this is half a degree to 1. So we'll say a half a degree to 3/4 of a degree above normal, spread across most of the Pacific above about 100 meters, and, you know, nothing different there. So what's been going on over time? Upper ocean heat anomalies, 300 meters, West Pacific here, East Pacific here. We're going back in time, August 2016. This was our La Nina, cooler than water normal temperatures, just a degree or two. And of course, by winter, last winter, La Nina fell apart, kind of a neutral pattern. We got this, it wasn't even really a Kelvin wave, but we'll call it a Kelvin wave in March. And there was this anomalous warming off of Ecuador, and it was like a mini El Nino kind of thing tried to get going. Upwelling phase of the Kelvin wave cycle, another Kelvin wave, really wasn't a Kelvin wave, and whatever heat was left over here is just completely been dispersed now. You see on the chart here, oops, we'll go down, there you go, June, July. It's actually almost cooler than normal in the West Pacific, and neutral to slightly warmer, was 0 to half a degree, so, you know, just neutral the whole way across. So this at depth, again, the same story, just a homogeneous temperature pattern, biased, weakly warm. Taking a look at surface temperatures now, what's going on there? Well, it's interesting because there was a lot of upwelling going on here off of Peru the past couple of weeks, but just today's frame starts showing building warming again here. Not anything outrageous. This is in the Nino 1.2 region. This is a very noisy region, but you can definitely see the sense that there was cool water here. It had the trades picked up trades. High pressure here blows upwelling and trades along the coast of Peru and Chile, and then you can see it trailing off in this direction here. Temperatures were a lot warmer all in out here, like back when that sort of like weird El Nino thing was going on off of Peru in March, April, May kind of thing. You could see temperatures, well, if you knew what the picture looked like before, it's really cooled down a lot. Still biased slightly warm, but nothing as warm as it was. All the main warming is out here approaching, you know, south of, there's Hawaii right there, south of Hawaii and beyond. Just basically kind of a neutral looking pattern. The trend, 7-day trend. So remember we saw a little bit of warming going on here off of Peru that wasn't there. Well, this sort of shows it too. And I mean, just hints of yellow, nothing spectacular at all. Mainly, the feature is this is only a 7-day trend, cooling from Ecuador out to the Galapagos and sort of beyond there. Just like we were talking about, that cooling water working its way, following the trades to the east. Nothing that indicates a particularly warming pattern going on, just kind of neutral. This is the one deal here from California, and from day to day it changes, but there's been this steady wall like here. Sort of smells of the warm phase of the PDO. We'll see how that plays out. But there's this perpetual brick wall right along here, and it's sort of, you get the sense that warm water the water's warmer up along here than it has been in years past, but that's maybe just perception on my part. And then you can see it here also. So here's these little pockets of cooler than normal water. Now this isn't 7 days. This is the actual compared to normal anomalies. So still generally warm, but here's that cooling. Just things settling down in this region here. But the Nino 3.4 region is the one that counts from here out to here, 120 to 175 degrees north and south of the equator. But what ends up here always originates here, it seems like, and the trades carry it in there. So it's warm here. It's warm here because it was warm over here months ago, and all that warm water transported to the west. It's starting to cool. We expect that at some point to make it here. And when we start looking at the temperature forecast in here, you'll see why we're saying what we're saying. And also, here is this kind of signal of the PDO thing. Cooler pattern up here, warmer to the south. You want to see the warming build up in the Pacific Northwest, but we expect to see that maybe more in the fall, not so much in the summer. So we've inspected subsurface ocean temperatures. We've inspected surface temperatures, what's going on in the atmosphere on top of the ocean. Well, Southern Oscillation Index, difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti. Here's the daily numbers. When they're negative for a prolonged period of time, it suggests at least the active phase of the MJO for like a 25, 30-day period. And then when it stays active for 90, or negative for 90 or more days, then you start smelling El Nino. So we're going to do a little tour actually starting June 1st. It doesn't show it here. It went negative. And just about every reading since then has been negative. And we thought it was all over back here at the end of June, but now we're down at -15. So this sort of hints of the active phase of the MJO. We look at the 30-day running average. We went from neutral, and we're now down at -9.76. Certainly, if you get down to -15, that's a pretty good pulse of the active phase of the MJO. So I think it would be safe to say we're moving towards some active phase of the MJO. But of course, how much you want to bet tomorrow this will go positive or something and start wiping that out. Anyway, 90-day running average. If this goes down to -15, -20, then you're looking at El Nino. We're down at -4.9, -4.91. It was 5. We're not going any deeper. No hint of El Nino, just a neutral pattern, basically. And then the other index, the ESPI index, instead of pressure, it's precipitation north of Australia versus the area north of Tahiti. And the index is -2.09. This is certainly troubling. It means it's a lot drier here than normal. If you were in some sort of and it's interesting because you'd expect, with warmer water in here, you'd expect that precipitation would increase in this region, but it's actually negative by 2 standard deviations, meaning right in here, things are pretty dry. Certainly no sign of El Nino, certainly a sign of La Nina, and it would not be surprising. So in the depth of the La Nina last winter, I think we were down at -1.9, and it steadily worked its way. It was almost neutral there, and then about a month ago, it started dropping again, and now it's down even more negative than it was at the peak of La Nina last winter. This kind of, and sometimes, or certainly this has been used as a leading indicator. This leads what happens at ocean temperatures by about 3 months or so. So 3 months from now, what are we looking at? July, August, September, into October. Temperatures might actually start falling in the Nino 3.4 region. How far? Unknown. It would not be surprising to see us go into another weak La Nina sort of thing this winter. I mean, when you have 2 years of a super El Nino, normally you would expect a super La Nina, the year or two following. We haven't done that. So we might end up with 3 years of weak La Nina, but you know what? That's better than super strong La Nina. I'll take it any day of the week, and this is sort of what this is hinting at. Let's dive one step deeper. Now everything sort of adds up when you look at this. CFS forecast for the Nina 3.4 region, that's that area, 120 west to 170 west, the main area for monitoring El Nino on the equator. Currently our temperatures right here at about half a degree. In fact, let's verify that. And we're just looking in the Nina 3.4 region tonight, and here's actual temperatures or satellite-based you can see the trend. It's plus 0.510, so just barely above half a degree. And you sort of look over the trend here, and yeah, it's been consistently like that since back in mid-April. So that verifies. Now, we know the ESPI is falling, and sure enough, and we sense that there's no warm water in the West Pacific, so there's nothing to get an El Nino going. And if you look at the forecast here, the model picks up on that and just has temperatures. We're only a half a degree above normal. That's not El Nino. I mean, it would be if it held for 9 months, but the forecast is for it to slowly. And remember, we also saw pockets of cool water off South America, and that whole area, ocean temperatures are starting to drop. That eventually is going to advect to the west on the equator, end up in the Nina 3.4 region. The model picks up on that and shows this sort of gently, steadily declining trend. By the time we get to January, we're down at dead neutral. Dead neutral does not a La Nina make. I'll take it. But even if it did dip down to a half a degree or something like that, that's not the end of the world. You know, we got to pay the price for 2 good years. I mean, we got piles of rain last year. Snow was good. Surf was big and good in November, and then one little pulse in January. But, wasn't a great year last year. This coming winter, the suspicion is it'll be neutral to weak La Nina, very directionless, no major MJO activity. So kind of a gutless winter, more than likely. Sure, there'll be storms, there'll be surf, but it'll sort of be like the summer. Yeah, there's waves every now and then. The southern hemi wakes up. It sort of pushes a little bit, but there's just not a lot of energy in the atmosphere. That's because there's not a lot of energy in the ocean. That's because the ocean discharged and basically, did everything it was going to do during that super El Nino. And now it's going to take 4 years of neutral for, the sun beating down on the ocean, starting to warm it up and sort of get things back in sync. If we pay for a couple of years with weak, gutless conditions, that's better than raging La Nina any day of the week. So anyway, forecast has it going down to neutral and then creeping up again in the spring. So that's our best guess. And all these pieces seem to fit together pretty well. The timing's pretty good, especially seeing what the ESPI is doing and temperatures down the southern hemi right now. So that's kind of it. So in the short term, series of small storms, gales, forecast for the extreme southeast Pacific. That's good for Costa Rica, Central America, Peru, down into Chile. Small energy for Southern California. Probably not a whole lot for Hawaii. Wind swell still looks like it's going to hang kind of on and off relative to California and Hawaii. Medium term, not a whole lot of a change expected. Jet stream kind of weak. Not a lot of energy anywhere. And wherever it is, it's focused on the Indian Ocean and South Africa. Pretty classic La Nina kind of setup. All the indicators and tea leaves are suggesting that we're moving, again, sort of a continuation of a weak La Nina pattern for this coming winter. So, but the good news is westerly anomalies forecast at least to the date line, and maybe sort of the La Nina will be eastward displaced more over California, so the ocean maybe will get a chance to be a little bit active. Long-distance swell kind of thing, clean, small swells. That's the guess as of right now. Anyway, happy 4th of July. We'll do this again next week, same time, same channel. Thanks for watching.